Let's talk about lions. Not the ones in Masai Mara lying under acacia trees waiting for Discovery Channel royalties. I'm talking about the lions that once stood on pulpits across Kenya. Lions whose roars were sermons, whose claws were words, and who scared presidents more than coups actually did. There was a time, and not so long ago, when the conscience of this nation didn't reside or live in editorials or NGOs or social media for that matter. It lived in sanctuaries. Bishops thundered against injustice. Reverends called out corruption by name, and they risked death, torture, and betrayal. And that never cowed them because they continually spoke. Their roar was so loud it cracked open a dictatorship and forced multi-party democracy into existence. But listen today. Past the worship songs, past the prosperity pastor's Rolex catching the light, past the Sadaka basket making its third round like a matatu tout that just won't quit. What do you hear? Nothing. Absolute silence. The lions of the Kenyan church have been caged. Their roar reduced to a polite power when politicians actually drop donations at the altar. So what silenced them? And more importantly, can the lion roar again? This is the story of the brave clergy who once roared, the forces that muzzle them, and the damning silence of a church and a generation that has gone eerily cold. Welcome to the Kenyan Week That Was. I'm your host, DOI. You see, to understand the silence, we must first revisit the noise. And to break it down, we have to look at people that clergymen that actually stood out from the beginning. And to start us off, we speak about Bishop Alexander Muge. You see, Muge wasn't just a bishop. He was a firebrand with a collar. He preached in Eldoret, Moi's actual backyard. He told the regime directly, we will only support you in what is true, just, or noble. That's not diplomacy. That's flipping the middle finger to a dictator in church Latin. Muge spoke against Mlolongo queue voting, where you literally lined up behind your candidate of choice like a primary school child queuing for Gitari. Only difference being, the headmaster or headmistress was a special branch and they were taking notes. People begged him to tone down, but he refused. He told his friends, I know I will die young, but I must speak the truth. And that wasn't drama. That was prophecy, because it came true. Because after being publicly threatened by a cabinet minister, Muge visited Busia against all warnings. And unfortunately, he never returned alive. His death shook the nation, but it also immortalized him as a symbol of uncompromising courage. Speak of Reverend Timothy Njoya, the theologian who treated Moi's dictatorship like a bad first draft and rewrote it live from the pulpit. Educated in Princeton, Njoya was articulate, brilliant, and absolutely fearless. On the New Year's Eve of 1989, while the rest of Kenya was busy preparing resolutions like, I will eat less ugali or will exercise more, Njoya told the government its only resolution should be to abolish the one-party rule. He directly called for the repealing of Section 2A of the Constitution. And to say that loud was like walking into State House and telling Moi, my guy, your time is up. For that, he was beaten, defrocked, and silenced. Or so they thought. Instead, his bloodied face from Saba Saba protest became an icon. His suffering turned his words into a gospel of resistance. And when asked later why he risked it all, Njoya said faith without risk is dead. Walk in Archbishop David Gitari. Because you see, if Muge was a fire and Njoya was a scalpel, Gitari must have been the thunder. As Anglican Archbishop of Mount Kenya, Gitari regularly delivered sermons so explosive that parishioners would sneak copies out like contraband leaflets. He confronted tribalism, electoral rigging, and government-sanctioned violence. And at one point, armed men literally invaded his house and tried to kill him. Unfortunately, he survived. And the very next Sunday, he preached even harder. Because what's the point of surviving an assassination attempt if you do not use your extra life to troll the devil and or the regime? And if all those examples are not enough, then think of Bishop Henry Okulu, the Anglican Bishop of Maseno, who openly demanded for constitutional reforms and declared KANU's one-party rule immoral and pushed for democracy when others were still whispering. Moi called him a troublemaker. And guess what? Okulu called Moi's bluff. You see, together, these men forged the NCCK, or the National Council of Churches of Kenya, into what Moi called the subversive organization number 1. And if a dictator calls you that, my guy, you know you must be doing the Lord's absolute work. Their all terrified the state. Their courage opened spaces for opposition politics. Their sermons were quite literally the scaffolding for the democracy we stand on. This, my guys, was a golden era. The church was the conscience of the country, and its roar could be heard from sanctuaries all the way to the house on the hill. But unfortunately, lions attract hunters. First came fear. You see, Muge's assassination showed clergy that death was the price for dissent. Suddenly, pulpits weighed sermons like suicide notes. Then came the carrot, aka prosperity gospel. Instead of seek ye first the kingdom of God and his justice or righteousness, it became seek ye first the Range Rover, and all these other things shall be added unto you. Instead of railing against ufisadi, pastors preached against poverty demons. The solution wasn't a protest, it was to sow a seed, and conveniently, ever so conveniently, into the pastor's account. And my, the state couldn't have invented a better distraction even if it tried. Angry citizens were no longer storming streets. They were now storming ATM lobbies to withdraw their very last 500 bob to ensure that they could plant a seed. Politicians saw the opportunity. They carried sacks and sacks of cash to churches, funding sanctuaries, silencing pulpits. How could a bishop condemn the same politician who just built his cathedral's roof? The raw had been traded for the sound systems, the mega churches and the luxury SUVs. And by the 2000s and the 2010s, the transaction was complete. Church pulpits had become campaign stages. And to bring it even closer home, President William Ruto has taken it further, building a chapel at State House, merging throne and altar in a way that makes constitutional lawyers lose their minds. Meanwhile, clergymen line up to bless corrupt leaders, accepting donations so large that they should come with money laundering disclaimers. Yes, but there are exceptions. Archbishop Olisapit and some Catholic bishops, but they are lonely voices in a sea of silence. And young Kenyans noticed. Because you see, during the Gen Z protests of 2024, the youth openly mocked the church online. Stop being politicians, MCs, my guys. Remember the people. It's damning indictment when teenagers with TikTok accounts are braver than the bishops. The silencing of the church has left Kenya adrift. Corruption now is thriving. The pulpit is no longer feared by the powerful, but it is used by them to gain maximum respect. The betrayal runs so deep that in 2007, Eldoret saw a church burned with worshippers trapped inside. Once churches were sanctuaries, now they are battlegrounds. That is the price of a silenced conscience. Into this vacuum have stepped bloggers, activists, TikTok prophets, and now they roar, but without that institutional muscle of the church. Their sparks are not yet afire. This is not just a Kenyan thing, though. You see, South Africa's church roared under apartheid, but post-apartheid, it has grown quiet. In America, evangelicals once fought slavery. Today, many fight culture wars while hugging corrupt politicians. And in Nigeria, prosperity gospel pastors live in mansions while their congregants drown in poverty. It's a global sickness. When the pulpit trades prophecy for power, guess what? The nation rots. And here's the thing. The silence is not just in the pulpit. It's also in the pews. Where are the boomers? You know, the elders who once filled churches to hear Muge, Njoya, or Gitari. You saw their courage firsthand. Why are you so quiet now? You once marched. You once protested. You hid leaflets under your mattresses. You watched Njoya bleed on TV and wept. Or saw Muge buried too soon, and you swore never again. So why? Why are you quiet now? Have you, like your churches, been bought? Have you grown tired, or do you believe democracy was a one-time fight? Because let me tell you, democracy is never finished, and freedom has no expiry date. Your silence is betrayal. Betrayal of the men you once clapped for, betrayal of the youth you birthed, and betrayal of a nation that you promised. You cannot sit in your home scolding Gen Zs for being unruly while yourselves refuse to roar. You cannot clap in church as politicians donate stolen billions, then complain about the price of hunger. If the lions of the pulpit are silent and the lions of the pews are silent, then Kenya, unfortunately, is left to the jackals. So to the boomers, wake up. To the church of your youth, the church of your youth roared, why don't you roar today? And to the youth, don't wait for bishops. Imagine, become the bishops. Your TikTok hashtags and protests are the new pulpits. Your voices are the new roar. The book of Proverbs actually says the wicked flee though no one pursues, but the righteous are as bold as a lion. Kenya's lions are not dead. They're just asleep. But if they don't wake, guess what? The hyenas will run this nation to the bone. So here's my altar call. Boomers, will you roar again? Gen Zs, will you keep roaring until the lions of old join you? Because the silence of the church is not just disappointing, it's fatal. Kenya does not need lap cats. It needs lions. And the roar will only return if all of us, and I mean all of us, demand it. So asante sana for watching. And if this has moved you, subscribe, share, comment, but above all, speak and speak out. Because guess what? Silence is how nations actually die. I've been your host, DY, and I'm welcoming you back again. Please share this content. Speak to your friends, your pastors, your parents, everybody, and remind them that this fight does not know age, does not know creed, because we are not just fighting for specificities, but we are fighting for a nation that has always been and will always be our home. Kwaheri, and have yourselves a lovely, lovely week ahead.